That's hissy.
I used to think healing was supposed to sound heroic, like victory speeches, like medals hitting a wooden table, like somebody finally saying, "You made it." But healing sounded more like silence, like sitting in the truck too long after work, because home felt safer when the engine was still running. Like staring at a grocery store aisle, trying to remember why your heart suddenly started racing. Like waking up at 2:13 in the morning, sweating through memories you never asked to keep. See, they trained us to survive the battlefield, but nobody really taught us how to survive ourselves afterward. Nobody talked about how trauma follows you home wearing civilian clothes, how it hides in fireworks, crowded rooms, empty bottles, divorce papers, missed phone calls, and the sentence, "I'm fine." Especially that sentence. I know veterans who carried entire teams on deployment, but struggle to carry groceries inside the house now. Men and women who could navigate chaos overseas but can't navigate their own thoughts when the room gets quiet. And still, they wake up. Still, they fight. That matters. You hear me? That matters. Because hope isn't always loud. Sometimes hope is just making the appointment, answering the phone, talking for the first time, saying, "No, I don't think I'm okay." That's courage too. Maybe even the purest kind. See, the world loves the image of the warrior, but healing asks something harder. It asks the warrior to become human again, to let people in, to trust again, to stop apologizing for wounds nobody can see. And that process, it's ugly sometimes. There are setbacks, bad nights, anger that shows up uninvited, days where depression feels heavier than body armor ever did. But there are also moments, small moments, where light gets through. A kid's laugh, a sunrise after a sleepless night, brothers and sisters sitting around a table finally telling the truth, a stranger saying, "Me too." That's where healing begins. Not in pretending the trauma never happened, but in realizing the trauma doesn't get to write the ending. You survived war. You survived loss. You survived becoming someone you barely recognized. Now comes the hardest mission of all, believing you deserve peace too. And maybe peace doesn't mean forgetting. Maybe peace is learning that your scars are not proof you're broken. They're proof you kept going. So to every veteran still fighting battles nobody sees, you are not weak for needing help. You are not forgotten. And your story, it is not over.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to Deterrence Through Truth. You know, we saw that the flyer up there, so we have made the official announcement that our guest today, John Ring, is now the co-host for Deterrence Through Truth. So this episode is his chance to tell his story and his warrior's loss. But moving forward, John will be joining us in the studio to help us articulate and amplify the voices of so many other families. And so, welcome aboard. That experience that you carry with this, I think, will touch other families in a way that I couldn't do that alone. And so, we're glad to have you on the team.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be a part of the team. We've been doing this for a long time. I've taken a different role um, in all of our advocating, and if I can help families, absolutely, it's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And so the Deterrence Through Truth this Deterrence Through Truth series is just not a series. We're hoping it turns into a lifeline. So behind every loss to suicide, we do have families left behind that carry the weight of this absence. Whether that be a mother, a father, a spouse, a child, a sibling. These are the warriors who remain often fighting silent battles that nobody sees in the wake of a loss. And so this interview series was created because we wanted to give those voices a place to be heard where we could have raw, honest, and open and unfiltered conversations, because that is what has the power to break the stigma that we're experiencing around mental health and to open up these conversations to save lives. And so we think this is important just because, when we look at some of the statistics, parents who lose children are often twice as likely to lose their own battle to mental health in the wake of a loss. And a widow or intimate partner is 3 times as more likely to face that same internal war if they lose a partner to this. And so, because, and also we have to talk, we talk about the children because, the children of these veterans and first responders are now at a higher risk for suicide because maybe the exposure to repeated trauma, PTSD exposure in the home, or maybe those cultural barriers within those populations to seeking mental health care. Because if it's a military household and there's already a stigma surrounding, asking for help, how likely is that child going to ask for help if they never see mom or dad ask for help? And so it really is a tough time for these children. And then they're already in an environment where there's already exposure to means to do it, firearms, weapons, etc., stuff like that. And then the last thing with these kids is those frequent moves. They're constantly changing, schools. They're losing friends. They're having to find new friends, and that just becomes taxing for them, and it's tough on their mental health. So we talk about this because these aren't just statistics. These are families. These are futures that we can still protect because they are the ones carrying the load behind. And so the Deterrence Through Truth video series exists just to amplify the voices of these surviving families. And it's not only to honor their loved ones, but to give a purpose and connection and restore that identity, maybe, for those that may be struggling with this loss. And so we just ask you that join us every third, second, and fourth Sunday of the month. And we'll be live on new episodes with John as the co-host. And we ask you to join that series, get involved in those conversations, and then just share and circulate that so we can get our word out there. And I do want to thank our title sponsor for the Deterrence Through Truth, Mari Bennett. Mari has believed in our mission and helping us bring these critical conversations to life. And so if you want to get a hold of Mari, it's https mari.searchhomesinSavannah.com. And her number is 253-363-5754. Give her a call and tell her that your friends over at Heroes in the Sky sent you. John, welcome in. This is going to be a little unique episode because this episode will be time to amplify your voice and talk about your loss and your journey. And I think that's a real good starting point to move into the next episodes where you will be the ones helping the families carry out their conversations. So welcome in.
Thank you. We've been doing a lot of work together recently, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to how this can help other people that have gone through this kind of pain.
Absolutely. So before we get into, the exact details and who Trey was and your story, I want to share a video that we did in honor of Trey. So not only the ones watching this can maybe see who Trey was, but also the person he was, how kind he was, his selfless, mentality, all that stuff, but also see pictures of him in action and just just learn more about who Trey was and the legacy that we're carrying on. So we're going to play that, and then we're going to get into his story.
I used to think healing was supposed to sound heroic, like victory speeches, like medals hitting a wooden table, like somebody finally saying, "You made it." But healing sounded more like silence, like sitting in the truck too long after work, because home felt safer when the engine was still running. Like staring at a grocery store aisle, trying to remember why your heart suddenly started racing. Like waking up at 2:13 in the morning, sweating through memories you never asked to keep. See, they trained us to survive the battlefield, but nobody really taught us how to survive ourselves afterward. Nobody talked about how trauma follows you home wearing civilian clothes, how it hides in fireworks, crowded rooms, empty bottles, divorce papers, missed phone calls, and the sentence, "I'm fine." Especially that sentence. I know veterans who carried entire teams on deployment, but struggle to carry groceries inside the house now. Men and women who could navigate chaos overseas, but can't navigate their own thoughts when the room gets quiet. And still, they wake up. Still, they fight. That matters. You hear me? That matters. Because hope isn't always loud. Sometimes hope is just making the appointment, answering the phone, talking for the first time, saying, "No, I don't think I'm okay." That's courage too. Maybe even the purest kind. See, the world loves the image of the...
I would say you're never prepared for that phone call. I was the first one in Trey's immediate family to get that phone call. His fiance's stepfather called me. He was a Marine veteran. And I saw him pop up on my phone. It was January 7th of this year. And I thought it was my neighbor. And because they're both named Doug. And so when I answered the phone, I kind of started out by like, "Dude, are you ever going to take your Christmas lights down?" And I threw Doug completely off because he's calling me to like change my entire life, you know? And he's like, "John, I think you might have the wrong Doug." And I'm like, "Oh, hey man, what's up?" And he tells me, and it's a repeat. "What did you just say?" And it's shock. It's immediate shock. You know, my second thought was his mom, his siblings. And I didn't want his mom finding out from a sheriff's department. Luckily, they live in the town next to me. And that became my mission. I needed to be the one to tell, even though like I don't put that conversation on anybody ever. That is never something you want to look a mom in the face and say to her, especially when it's your own child.
All right. I know that's tough to watch, and that's, we do that just so we can continue to honor the legacy and memory of Trey, and also the commitment that you have shown in, after losing him, to continue the advocacy, to continue to help others, because you very well could have tucked tail and ran and I'm not doing this anymore. This is too much. But that you didn't do that. And I think people need to applaud that courage that families like yours and all these other families that have joined this club that they never asked to join or never want anybody else to have to feel this way. But, facing that and moving forward, this is your story. And so we do want people to know that, this is a tough conversation. We are talking about mental health and suicide. And if it becomes too heavy or you need a break, please take a break, walk away from the screen. If you are in immediate help or an emergency and you need you or your family's in trouble, call 911 immediately. We are not mental health professionals. You should not use anything you hear on our programs as counseling, legal, or any kind of other advice other than peer-to-peer support. And so, John, welcome in. And today we're going to start by introducing your warrior that you've lost, but just because we've lost the warrior doesn't mean we're going to let their legacy die. So we're going to continue to talk. So, John, please introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about who Trey was before he joined the military and his early life.
So I am a U.S. Army veteran, 3rd ID, 48th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, 2013 to 2021. I'm a dad. Now I'm a grandfather. And, as this grows, living in this, the weight of Trey following in my footsteps gets heavier and heavier. He was 5 when he came into my life. Trey was my adopted son, and from day one, he was quiet, very respectful, very loving. He always wanted to be a cowboy. I remember going up to his room the first time, and it was all cowboyed up, badges, cowboy hat, belts, boots and everything. He always visioned being a cowboy. That's what he wanted. And just growing up, he was always quiet. He was never argumentative. He never got into any trouble. He was the kid that, like, you're like, oh wow, like if I could have 4 or 5 more kids like that, that'd be great. You know what I mean? It never works out like that. They're all different. But Trey was just he was always there. Like if you were having a tough time, I remember, like, growing up, 4 kids in the house, we'd have financial struggles at times. He'd run to his piggy bank and offer to give us the $5-10 that he had. That was the kind of kid that he was. He just loved life. He had struggles, with his biological father and feelings and, things like that. And, but he was in a family and he was loved and played football when he was young. I coached up in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. I always joke with him because he was never aggressive. He would always talk to you before he tackled you. It was frustrating at the time, but later on in life, you get it. Not everybody has that internal fire. But he was very soft. He was very delicate. As he got older, I wouldn't say that changed at all. He got a little bit more argumentative. He was a teenager and, going through school and being around friends. And, but I honestly, I can only tell you there's probably like 2 times in Trey's entire childhood that he actually got in trouble. It was just so laid back. He was always laid back. He enlisted very young. I mean, not very young. I'm sorry. He enlisted when he was 17 in high school. And when he graduated, that's when he went. He went to Fort Leonard Wood and then Fort Sill and then to Fort Hood.
Okay. Yeah. And so you think he followed your footsteps? Is that something that, like a lineage thing? Because I know when I joined the military, my father didn't serve, but my grandfathers before him served. And it was just one of those things that I guess pushed me to join because I wanted to continue that tradition. Do you think that was the case here? or did he just make that decision? That's what he wanted to do.
Well, honestly, Trey's probably the reason I did enlist. Because I was younger in life. I was 19, wanted to go in, you know, broke my hand, didn't happen. Life happened, life went on. Went into law enforcement instead. But Trey was, it was probably about 2012. And, you know, Trey came to me and was like, "Hey, Dad, I want to join the Army when I grow up." And so for me, it kind of like lit a match inside of me because I didn't want to be that hypocrite. I do come from a long line of military, and the more I dig into my history, it goes back way further to the Revolutionary War. But my grandfather served in the Philippines. His brother was killed in Germany during World War II. So I mean, there's a long line there, and it's always something I wanted to do. So when Trey came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to join the Army," I didn't want to be that hypocrite dad. I didn't want to be like trying to give my son advice on something I didn't know nothing about. And so, like, I totally changed my entire life and went and enlisted and joined the military. So it's Trey's words that pushed me to that final chapter of actually doing it. And um, I always regret not doing it earlier in life. I kind of regret that I did it later, after the conflicts. But, you know, a lot of people have told me, in serious conversations, like, John, like the role that you play with Walk for Vets or Buddy Watch Walk, and the how you're able to help veterans is because just enough to know what veterans go through, but you haven't experienced the trauma to the point where it affects you every single day. So, yeah, I have trauma, but mine comes probably mostly from law enforcement. And obviously, a lot of it comes from advocating now, because as you advocate, that does become a situation. So, Trey's the reason why I made that lateral move and joining the military. So now, you know what I mean? Like, now that he did it, and he went to Iraq, came back completely different. There's a part of that little survivor's guilt there that kind of like, you know, it stings.
Yeah, and so that's true. And look, talking about parents and noticing what's different with their children, because that's the same exact statement that my father told me when I joined the military and went to back to Iraq for 27 months, and then I came home, and my dad would look at me and go, "I don't know who you are." Like, did not, he said my eyes were different. Everything, personality was different. Everything about me that he thought was his child was completely different. And so it is difficult for parents. Um, I can imagine how difficult that was for my parents to
Yeah.
see a different child than they raised. And then for you to have to see, Trey, a different person once he returned. And to all the critics that, I'm glad you brought that up, that talk about, that make that, you're not a combat veteran or blah blah. The whole comparison between veteran and combat veteran, I think, needs to go away,
Yeah.
because everybody served, every put on that uniform, and a small percentage of people actually join the military and serve this country. And if you're one of those members, you shouldn't be ridiculed because you didn't get to see combat, or for whatever reason they want to talk about you for, or make themselves feel superior to you because you didn't do this and this. And we try to always, I like to have those conversations, because I don't agree with this mindset at all, that because you're a combat veteran, you did something better than the person who didn't deploy. I think that whole thing needs to go away. All it does is create division in the veteran community, which we should
Right.
not. We should be producing like unity, and we should be trying to unite with each other to strengthen our community bonds with our, not only our brothers and sisters as veterans, but as our community. And so, what are we showing our community when our community's watching two veterans or a group of veterans battle back and forth of who's better because one of them deployed? I mean,
Yeah.
what are we setting? What optic are we setting? What are people's? It didn't sit right with me.
No, and it's already a small community. So,
Yeah.
like, like we gotta work together, and the division in already a small community, it just
Yep.
creates big problems, and
Yeah.
we don't need that. We don't need that divide.
Well, you see that, and now it transfers to all these other social media platforms.
Yeah.
Like, and I hate to say that, but TikTok is getting a lot. Is just as bad, where you got so many veteran groups, calling each other out or doing all these things instead of being, having that brother's back and being there for them and doing all these things that you should be doing to strengthen the bond with your brothers and sisters in arms. We're pushing them away by arguing with them or going after them, or it doesn't make any sense to me. And we still use TikTok, but we've pulled away a little bit because the division I see on that app and within the veteran community is really disheartening to me.
It's very
Yep.
territorial.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So we we know that, that's a common thing to see. As a parent, you saw a different child when Trey returned. And so with that, I've been blessed to know you for about 8 years and know your family and know what type of people you are. But for those that didn't, that are maybe this is their first time learning about you and your family. How did that change when we lost, when you lost Trey? How did that change, like, anything about you or how your family deals with things? Because that's a true, that's a traumatic loss, and sometimes those can have adverse effects on our families, which we try to talk about on this program.
Well, for me, when it initially happened, me and Trey's mom, we haven't been together since 2018, and we were able to come together, to kind of be supportive for one another and the kids. Um, does that time go away? It does. Things start to slip back into, being more normal, which is expected. It's a moment, and you're being supportive for one another. Now, I will say each one of us is grieving differently. I've been around the veteran world for what, since 2018, serving since 2013. And um although it didn't take away the shock of this situation and losing a child, but I was already been advocating since 2019. And so, for the last 2 years, and this, like, I haven't been really active. I've been, I have social media and I share things and this and that, but I haven't really been out there and putting myself. And so when we lost Trey, it kind of woke me up again. Like, yo, man, like, you can't just not do this. This is a result of, somebody going through trauma. And can we save them all? No, we cannot, not individually, but as a group, we can do a better job. So, reaching out to people and working with other people. I've met so many people that are in this family, of loss, of losing a loved one to suicide. I've met so many people just since January 7th, since Trey's passing, amazing people that are out there doing the work, But as far as the family goes, you kind of stumble because you don't know how everybody's grieving and the process. And you don't want to insult somebody or make them feel a certain way. So you try to be delicate with the situation, but we all have to grieve in our own way. We can't hide in our feelings or be afraid, of stepping on somebody's toes. We all have to respect the fact that we grieve differently, and we have to maneuver in that capacity. For me, doing this is what helps me. It helps me get through this process. And for other people, it might be sitting in a dark room. It might be just hiding away from everybody and not wanting to talk about it or not wanting to deal with it. And that's okay. That's your way of doing it. Um, but for everybody that does come out and create organizations in memory of their loved one, my hat is off to you, because it's not an easy thing to feel. I mean, it's the most excruciating pain that you can imagine, just losing a child. And especially feeling like you kind of guided your child in that path, and then countless times I've been there for Trey. I've always answered the phone when Trey was struggling while in the military after Iraq, and he got out that way, and it was treatment after treatment, and I'm just like, one more phone call. Could you have made that call one more time? I would have answered. I would have been there, and you would have got the help you needed. But that's not the way it went. So I have to live with that, and I have to keep moving in Trey's memory, because Trey was not just a veteran suffering. Trey was a veteran that he was a service member who suffered. He was a veteran that suffered. He was a veteran that got treatment. He was a veteran that came out and advocated with me and did walks all over the United States, who helped other people, and not just random people. He also helped his battle buddies. Ross and Christian serve with him. These guys are like, you know, they talked every day. So now they're probably leaning more towards each other. I know they are, and I'm glad, and I check on them. But this is everything that is impacted by that, and the family. It is confusing, because, like I said, everybody grieves differently, and you're just trying to navigate that.
Yeah, and we talk about this as so the point of this show is to highlight how suicide ripples through families and communities, and then the aftermath of what that looks like. And so, your perspective and point of view as a father dealing with this every day, I think, is very important to help not only give yourself some identity and purpose to keep Trey's memory alive, to reduce your elevated risk for suicide, but what about all those families that are going to hear you talk, and they're hearing your story, hearing your courage may give them courage, or give them the ability to, what if they're having these thoughts themselves, and they see what the action does to a family, and they say, wait a minute, I can't do that to my family, because I don't want my wife or my father or my mother to go through this when I'm gone. That's the important feature of these conversations. That's what we really want them to push. Is we have been accused, and I'll say it out loud, we've been accused of doing these video series so we can gain views or we can gain clicks. And that sat so internally wrong with me, and just hit me in the gut so bad, because that's not who we are. But all those comments do, and all those accusations made against us, all it does is fuels me to continue to do this for the correct reasons.
As it should. I mean, does everybody want to hear this? No. Is everybody in a place to hear this? No. But there are many people out there that do need to have these conversations and hear other people have these conversations, so that way they can grow within themselves and help other people, and not just themselves. So, absolutely,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. It's these conversations are here because there's two populations we want to hear this. One is those populations that are struggling. Can we create a deterrence where you'll hear this, and you will consider changing your mind about taking your life once you see what suicide does to your family left behind? And then the other populations is exactly that, the families like yours who have already experienced this loss, but they feel like they don't have the courage or that mental fortitude to come forward and talk about it, because they feel there's a stigma surrounding it. So the more families we get like yours, and all the other families that have participated in our programs, it just shows them that they can be strong and courageous too. And that it's not a bad thing for them to talk openly about their warrior, and how they lost their warrior, and what healing looks like. Because how do you heal if you don't talk about the struggles that got you there?
See, and I think for me, and this isn't everybody, but for me, it's not so much healing, it's learning to live. It's learning to push forward. The healing process. and could be different for a spouse, it could be different for a sibling, but losing a child, I don't think you like really heal from that, but I think you just find a way forward. And not everybody does that the same. You know, some people's forward is just waking up in the morning and taking a breath and pushing through a day. Some
Yeah.
people's forward is like going above and beyond, reaching out, holding a sign on the corner, live another
Yeah.
day, anything, so the picture is different for every single family that I've talked to, and including myself, navigating, between three other children, and my ex-wife. Everybody is grieving in their own way, and you just have to do. My fiance, about 4 minutes after I found out about Trey, and I was like in the zone of heading over to his brother's house and his mother's house. I said, I'm like in shock. And she looked at me and she said, follow your heart.
Mhm.
That's it. Follow your heart,
Yeah.
and it, I don't know. It's just one of those things like you rewind it all the time. What could I have done differently? What could I did? What could I have done to change the direction of this? And you have to live with the fact that you're going to do that. It's natural. You're
Yeah.
going to find everything that you could have did differently, especially
Mhm.
when you lose somebody close to you.
Yeah.
And the reality is, you know,
Yeah.
you you don't make those decisions. You have no control over that other than just being there for that person.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about, and I want to read this because this is important. So we have a lot of people who are struggling that believe that their presence won't matter or that people will move on. And I want to talk about this a little bit because there's some scientific studies. Because how many times have you heard or have we heard the question, how can someone take their life if they knowing what it's going to do to their family? And here's the real response to this. The person in that cone of despair, the person who is having those suicidal thoughts, there have been studies that show they're in those the warriors we've lost to suicide that there is low activity in the front or prefrontal cortex of the brain in those the ones we've lost. And that's significant because right there behind the forehead and the prefrontal cortex, that's our executive area of the brain, right? It handles reasoning, planning, impulse control, weighing consequences, empathy. So when you ask that question of the ones we've lost, well, how could they have done that knowing what it was going to do to their family? The answer is they didn't know what it was going to do to their family.
Right.
They scientifically, there's studies that show low activity in that prefrontal cortex made it very difficult for them to understand what that perspective was going to do to their family once they've done this. They didn't have a way to they didn't have a way to see that. Their brain was sick.
Yeah.
And so that's what I like to talk about is the fact that you cannot call this selfish because that person that warrior we've lost, right? They genuinely could not see past their own point of view. Their ability to empathize with others, to have empathy for their family and those around them that love them was taken away by that low activity in the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like talking to veterans that have survived suicide, that made that decision and lived. They say the same thing. I didn't know. Like
Yep.
they're in shock. Like they didn't have a plan. They didn't, sit there and make the conscientious decision to end their life. They're waking up from a coma. They're waking up in a hospital and they don't even know
Mm-hmm.
why they're there, and I know a woman that has done that, and it's scary, it's really scary. But one of the things that bothers me is that when you see comments or you see veterans saying, well, why is that person so weak? You know, that infuriates me because, it's not a sign of weakness if you're not in control.
Right.
There are certain aspects of our body and our life that we have no control over, and things are going to happen. And trauma does enhance that. Mental health issues, are a result of that. And so the trauma you got from serving or whatever you saw in life, I will open that door to anybody. You don't always have control over the reactions that you take. And it's a very scary thing. And I like to believe that to be very much true in a situation. Because Trey he was a new dad, two bonus children, a daughter, a fiance, and he loved life, and did he have dark moments? Absolutely. But he had never had any chance, no problem ever reaching out, before for help. Was he quiet? Did you have to pull things out of him sometimes and make him tell you more of the story? Absolutely. But I honestly think that's the situation Trey was in that moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's been proven. I mean, it's been shown in studies that those ones we lose, they're that very low activity or patterns of activity produce the inability to have empathy for anything around you, where you just don't, you can't see another person's perspective other than the fact your own pain. So you do not have the ability to see, oh, this is going to hurt my family this way, or my family's going to hurt this way because if I do this. They cannot see that reaction. They it
they're
it's
dumb.
it's been it yeah, it's shown. It's been shown over and over in studies. And so we talk about that. And so you yourself served, your son followed your footsteps. So we want to talk to those because we're about the 41-minute mark, right? We want to talk to those families that may be experiencing this loss. Maybe they just joined this exclusive club that nobody wanted to join, or maybe they've been living for it with a little bit and they're still struggling. So as a father, as a parent, what what would you say to those other parents who made you have to join this journey that maybe would help them, give them some inspiration or give them some kind of courage to continue the fight?
If you are the kind of person in your loved one's life that would always answer the call, would always be there, and that's how you carry yourself. It's not your fault, and I think it's the biggest thing is the first thing that you're gonna go to is regret. You're gonna regret every single moment that pops to your mind, everything that you could have done differently, every every time you had a fight, every time, whatever the situation is, it's all coming at you at once. Every feeling, every emotion. It's not your fault. And it's not going to make sense day 1, day 5, day 30, and depending on the person, maybe even 6 months. It's not going to make sense. But you have to do better each and every single day, and that's the thing. Move forward. Um, Reach out to people, it doesn't matter if it's a friend, coworker, another family member, um, just somebody that you're comfortable talking with, and have the conversations. You don't have to do it publicly. You don't have to, you could do it, have a conversation with yourself. Talk whatever puts you in a place that you can do better, a little bit better every single day. For me, the grieving process, I went from finding out to having to fly halfway across the country, make all these arrangements, handle all this stuff for 2 weeks, and once the smoke settled from that, that's when it actually sunk in for me. I was probably about a month just numb, silent, and in that process, all you have to do is keep going. You don't have to do your best. You don't have to show up every single day your best, but just keep moving forward because it will lighten. It does lighten. And there's people that you need to be there for, whether you have kids or, family, Or, you know what? There's a whole entire community of families like mine that could use a conversation, that could use some support. And you don't have to do it overnight. Just take your time, get better each day, and understand everything that you're feeling is normal. Whether it's, and I'm going to say this, ending it, it's normal. Like, yes, I mean, especially if it's an only child, or that's your best friend, that's your spouse, you have no children. Like, I get it. All these feelings are normal, but you have to be there. You have to be present. And you don't have to be the best, but just get better every day. Do something, that's gonna pull you closer to the grieving process.
Yeah, and that's important is because we can say use the word because that's the whole point here is yeah, it's very normal for a parent or a spouse to contemplate suicide after losing somebody so close to you. And we highlight that because that's one of the purposes and missions behind this show is because we feel that if we give families the opportunity to talk about their loved one, to talk about the what happened, and to talk about where they are now, maybe it gives them some hope and purpose that they are heard, they are not forgotten, they are not invisible. Because that's the biggest thing we're trying to stay away from is we already have a large enough stigma surrounding people who die by suicide because they tend to get swept under the rug because people don't want to talk about it.
Right.
But think about the families. Those families that lose them, they really fall in an elevated category because I've talked to so many families that after 6 months, people just quit checking on them.
Yeah.
Didn't call them, didn't check on them, and so they feel forgotten. They feel invisible. They feel like they don't matter, and so we want these conversations like this to show these families that they do matter.
And
That they're
I'm gonna say that's a very real thing. Like, it happens, and it probably happens to almost everybody. After a certain amount of time, all of that, and I'm not gonna say attention, right? Because it's not. It's people trying to help you. You know what I mean? But everybody's living a life, and time does go on, and that does happen. People stop calling, people stop checking. That's normal too. And you just have to be grateful for all the calls you had and all the people that did reach out and did, because I didn't want to, honestly, I didn't want to deal with like the hundreds of messages I was getting when it happened. So I kind of just let it all just sit aside and went back to it later. Um, but just you have to navigate it and do what you're comfortable with. And
yeah,
I that's the best advice that I can give. I mean, it's nothing that you're expecting, and it's a blow. And just like anything else, time. It's all
yeah,
about time.
absolutely. And that's the whole title of what we're trying to do here is tell the truth, raw stories of what suicide does to families, and hopefully in that raw truth in those hard conversations, we can produce courage and deterrence for those who are contemplating this action. Because it really does ripple through families and tear families apart of the what ifs or the whys or why couldn't they see this or why would they do all the whys that you'll never be able to answer. That's what suicide does to families. And um it's difficult, right? But we're going to ask one more question, and this I know this one's not going to be easy, but I think if it'll show people courage and maybe give them other families hope that they can continue to talk and answer difficult questions in their loss. So we've learned about who Trey was before he joined the military. Learned about just the person, selfless person he was, being there for everybody, giving money from his piggy bank to help, checking on his battle buddies when he was struggling himself. All these selfless actions that the person Trey is. He's still here. His legacy's still here. He'll never be forgotten. But if Trey could hear you right now, or if he could hear you and you had somebody come up to you that said, "Hey, I'm on a ledge. I'm thinking about ending it. I can't do this anymore." What would you want that person to understand before they make this permanent decision to leave this earth?
Well, I think it's important for individuals that are struggling, that are having those feelings, it doesn't go away. Those feelings, now for you, it may go away, but those feelings don't go away. It just gets pushed on to your family and friends because, there's the guilt, I could have made a phone call, or I could have called him more, or I could have, whatever. You're going to find that. That person that's on the ledge, you're not going to fix anything by doing this. You're just redirecting everything you're feeling, all the pain, everything that you've gone through, the people that, because let's be realistic, in these situations, when veterans or just people in general are going through these emotions and they're going through these struggles in life, it's impacting their family. And once you decide to make that choice, you're just moving it along.
Yeah.
And I have so many stories that I could share. We could talk for hours, but that person on the ledge, I would just look at them and say, you're not going to stop anything. If anything, you're going to spread what you're feeling in this moment, and you are going to spread it to 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 people. And now something that we could sit down and talk about, and we could work through, and we could get your family together, and we can have these talks, and you can express yourself and tell them how you're feeling so that maybe they can understand and they can help you make your life easier and better for you, because a lot of it's self-care. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to, be a burden to our family, to our friends. We feel like we're weak. It's not the case.
Yeah.
Get off the ledge. Let's not pass your pain on to everybody else around you. Let's help you.
And that is that weakness. That's not a sign of weakness because you feel like you're losing those battles to your demons. It's in fact the opposite. You've been battling those demons for so long, and you continue to not let them win. So the longer you fight them and battle those demons, that is a sign of strength. That's not weakness. You're continuing to fight even though you're depressed, isolated, lonely, feeling like you don't belong, but you're still continuing to fight. So that is complete. That is a complete sign of strength. If anybody's listening,
Absolutely.
that
And
it.
it definitely needs to be more driven, that, your feelings, the trauma, the mental health, it's not going to get better if you just ignore it.
Yeah.
It's not. And we need to talk about it. And I want to go back to what you were talking about, the critics, is that, Walk for Vets, the reason why I chose walking was, one, it slows everything down, right? Riding a motorcycle, driving, whatever the situation may be, walking slows everything down. Veterans feel heard when you're standing there and you're walking next to somebody and you're sharing their story, and vice versa. They're not alone. It's the same concept with this, bringing families together, families that are going through this now, not months ago, not years ago, but they don't feel alone. They feel like what they're feeling is normal and it's okay to feel that. And how can I do better tomorrow?
Yeah. Absolutely. And we hope that these conversations we're having give those families that exact feeling that I am heard, I'm not forgotten, my struggles aren't invisible, and somebody's here to listen. There's a
Yep.
there's a whole community behind Heroes in the Sky and Walk for Vets and all our other community partners that are here to listen. That family's voice can be heard. And that's why we do Deterrence Through Truth. Because we want them to be heard. We want them to feel like they belong. So yeah, we're right at that 5 minute mark. But I do want to say you will have a little statement here. So what we've heard today was not really a story meant for shock. We weren't trying. It is shocking to listen to it, but the goal was this is a reality that too many families are going to be living. This reality doesn't go away. And you've already said it twice. We always end with it. Suicide does not end pain. It simply transfers it. It multiplies it. It leaves it behind to the people who love you and who love you the most and who you cared about the most. And so if you are struggling right now, yeah, exactly. Reach out, talk to somebody, call, text. Just don't stay silent. Whatever you have to do to not stay silent. Because right now, if you are listening and you are in a dark space, we are not licensed professional counselors. We are not mental health professionals, and we are not legal advice. So please call 988 or the Suicide Crisis Lifeline, or if you or someone you know is immediately about to harm themselves, dial 911 and get help immediately. So, and your life does matter in this moment. So, we're going to close this out, John. We'll have that. We'll have a video to close this out. But as we end this, we want to thank you for your courage, your honesty, your courage to continue honoring Trey, and let you know that Heroes in the Sky and our entire community is behind you in future endeavors and Walk for Vets. And then, what's that final message we're giving to somebody that may watch this 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, who's in a dark place or sitting there? What's our final message to them?
Live another day. Live another day. Slow it down. Process what it is that you're feeling, and live another day. And I do want to give a shout out to my daughter-in-law. Although Trey and Kinsey were not married, but I'd always be my daughter-in-law. Kinsey, AJ, Aiken, Addie, love you guys. Texas family, love you guys. But yes, live another day, because listen, as a dad, a grandfather now, my granddaughter will be 2 in November. Where does this leave her?
Yeah.
It's left her not knowing her father, but she will know her father through us.
Yep.
So it's changed her entire life. So live another day, process through the pain, get help, live another day.
Right. And then to end on deterrence, the one thing that we always talk about is exactly how suicide ripples through families, and how do we quantify and show that to show you how serious this epidemic is, this plague. So we talk about 44 veterans a day. Now, every veteran suicide each one will affect a minimum of 5 family members and 135 community members, whether that be your battle buddy, your old drill sergeant, the people that loved you the most, right? So when you do the math, you take 44 veterans a day times the 5 family members times 135, and you're around 29,700 people affected by veteran suicide every day. So, those 44 veterans we lose, 30,000 people are affected a day from their decisions. You move that to the week. That's over 208,000 people per week that will be affected by veteran suicide. And then you look at it on the year, that's over 10 million, almost 10,400,000 people affected by veteran suicide every day. That's only veteran suicide. That's not law enforcement, first responder. That's only veteran suicide. 10 million people are affected by that choice. And then even if you break this down, because I want to break this down to the individual level, right? If we've got one veteran, and then you say 5, and then say 40, 5 times 135. So 675. If it's just one, what do they say, right? Can you just save one person, right? If you save one person from that ledge, if you move one person from that ledge, that's 5 family members you just kept their loved one here. And then if you say 5 times 135, I think my numbers are right. It's around 675 people. Just for if you just stop one person. If you stop one person from the dark ledge, get them off the ledge, get them to stay, you've now affected 675 people. So if you think stopping one person can't make an impact, you were completely wrong. Because your actions today, being there for somebody, answering the phone, checking up on them, listening to them, could save grief to 675 people in a day. So
check your people.
Yeah. If that's not powerful enough to show you why checking on people is enough, or why we have programs to try to reduce veteran suicide, this is why. Because 10,400,000 people a year, is a lot, and our numbers aren't decreasing. So those numbers are just climbing. So how many other families are feeling the grief that you feel across the United States, across the world? And so we really need to do our best to try to have those families tell their story. Let those families feel wanted. Let those families feel that their voice can be heard. Amplify their voice, amplify their courage, and so they don't feel invisible. And we are excited. We will end with this, that moving on all the new episodes, we will have you helping us do exactly that. Amplify those families' voices, make them feel heard, make sure they know they're not invisible. Make sure they know their struggles are real. They belong here, and we're going to honor their warrior.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, John, today. Your courage, your honesty, it takes a lot to continue advocacy. The last thing I will say is please give us the website and how to get more involved with walkforvets.org. If our listeners want to do that, how would they do that?
Oh, visit walkforvets.org. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And we do have walks coming up, 9/11 in Dover, Delaware, 9/24 in Kimball, Nebraska, and working on a few other things. So all are welcome to join us. Come out, walk, and I'll be linking up with James, Heroes in the Sky, Nautical Salute, Combat Kitchen. I know I'm forgetting one or two. I think I'm forgetting two. August 22nd.
Veteran Legacy. Yep. So that's really important too. I'm going to put this on the screen real quick. I don't know if you can see it, but hopefully people can. This is the flyer for that.
Yeah.
So, so what's happening here is we are all coming together for the Veteran Legacy Community Festival in Jacksonville Beach, Florida on August 22nd. It's going to be a great day of food, fun, bring the children, bounce houses, and just veteran camaraderie in the Jacksonville area. So if you're in Georgia, drive the hour and a half, 2 hours, come see us. If you're in Jacksonville, Florida, come out and see us, come learn about all the organizations. It's going to be all day. So it's an all-day event. Come out and enjoy yourself. But something really important is happening. We are having a live rendition of the Breaking the Silence Together, the Aftermath of Suicide podcast. We will be doing it live on stage in Jacksonville Beach. So if you are in the crowd, you can interact with us. You can ask us questions. You can become part of the conversation. You can become part of the change of this movement moving forward to reduce veteran and first responder suicide. So, yeah, August 22nd, come on out, ask us questions, be part of the podcast. And then we're going to end with that, John. So thank you for everything, and hang tight. We'll do the closing video, and we'll thank everybody for watching and listening. We do have a favor. If you're watching and listening, or you watch this 2-3 hours later, please hit that like button, circulate, share, get this to as many people as you can. You just never know who needs to hear this. You never know the families that this could help. And if you want to watch it after this, I will say all you have to do is either go to either one of our Facebook channels, or you can go to our YouTube channel, hit the live the live section, and then this episode will be there as well. So we're going to close with, yep. You got anything before we close?
No, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be doing my part to help other people and other families going through this. Love you, brother, and thank you for bringing me on.
Absolutely. Hang tight in the studio. We'll close out. And thank you for everybody listening. We'll see you when we're live again next. We love y'all.
I used to think healing was supposed to sound heroic, like victory speeches, like medals hitting a wooden table, like somebody finally saying, "You made it." But healing sounded more like silence, like sitting in the truck too long after work, because home felt safer when the engine was still running, like staring at a grocery store aisle, trying to remember why your heart suddenly started racing, like waking up at 2:13 in the morning, sweating through memories you never asked to keep. See, they trained us to survive the battlefield, but nobody really taught us how to survive ourselves afterward. Nobody talked about how trauma follows you home wearing civilian clothes, how it hides in fireworks, crowded rooms, empty bottles, divorce papers, missed phone calls, and the sentence, "I'm fine." Especially that sentence. I know veterans who carried entire teams on deployment, but struggle to carry groceries inside the house now. Men and women who could navigate chaos overseas, but can't navigate their own thoughts when the room gets quiet. And still, they wake up. Still, they fight. That matters. You hear me? That matters. Because hope isn't always loud. Sometimes hope is just making the appointment, answering the phone, talking for the first time, saying, "No, I don't think I'm okay." That's courage too. Maybe even the purest kind. See, the world loves the image of the warrior, but healing asks something harder. It asks the warrior to become human again, to let people in, to trust again, to stop apologizing for wounds nobody can see. And that process, it's ugly sometimes. There are setbacks, bad nights, anger that shows up uninvited, days where depression feels heavier than body armor ever did. But there are also moments, small moments, where light gets through. A kid's laugh, a sunrise after a sleepless night, brothers and sisters sitting around a table finally telling the truth, a stranger saying, "Me too." That's where healing begins. Not in pretending the trauma never happened, but in realizing the trauma doesn't get to write the ending. You survived war. You survived loss. You survived becoming someone you barely recognized. Now comes the hardest mission of all, believing you deserve peace too. And maybe peace doesn't mean forgetting. Maybe peace is learning that your scars are not proof you're broken. They're proof you kept going. So to every veteran still fighting battles nobody sees, you are not weak for needing help. You are not forgotten. And your story, it is not over.